Thank you very much. Yeah, I chose this slightly provocative title for my talk because we've heard a lot of like risk assessment within companies, but obviously like you still need to, like you still have the user there that you kind of need to take care of. And today I basically talk about two things. Why should we communicate risks to users, and what should we actually tell them about? But before I start, I want to quickly thank the people who did this research effort with me. There's a paper coming out in March of 2024 next year, where we're going to present all of this, and these are like my lovely co-authors, without of which I couldn't have done all that. So without further ado, you all know what informed consent is, and it's basically like the explicit requirement both under GDPR and under CPRA. And it kind of follows this notice and choice framework, right? Where kind of the framework assumes that data subjects make rational choices. And a rational choice is a choice that weighs costs and benefits of a decision. Benefits are quite clear if I choose a product, right? Like I'm choosing the product because I want these benefits. The costs, however, are like less easy to kind of estimate, and therefore kind of the notice and choice framework kind of requires that the privacy policies kind of gives you the information that you need to kind of make a proper estimation of the costs, which is also why the regulators ask us to kind of give all this information, and that the data subjects can actually integrate all this information in a way that they can actually estimate these risks. Now, we also know that informed consent is challenged by a lot of things, and we have the design issues that like we've talked about at length today, or like some people have brought them up. I'm not going to like touch on them. We have like the individual factors, right? So like people are not like homo economici or homini economici. People don't make rational decisions all the time. They like are victims to heuristics and biases, if you want to kind of use that framing. For example, they underweigh like long-term risks and overweigh short-term rewards, which is called hyperbolic discounting. And we have also research that indicates that they lack actually the mental models that to actually do like a good risk assessment. Just for all of you wondering, there is a like version of this talk which actually links to other resources and kind of references that I'm referencing. So yeah, and then there's also the structural factors, which I'm not going to like touch upon because it's really hard to kind of change structures through communication. But this kind of leaves us with two issues, right, which kind of both show that the requirements that we need for informed consent are not met, right? So privacy policies are not read, right? They're not attractive, and like people don't, even if they would read it, they have no ways of kind of integrating the information that a privacy policy provides. And like if I look now at like what approaches exist to like kind of better kind of do privacy policies, most of them actually focus on the design issue. And I'm going to kind of show you what I mean by that. So this is the state of the art right now. So we have like on the left side, there are like these so-called topic icons, right? So these are icons which are supposed to show you where you find which kind of information, which is good if you want to read a privacy policy, which most people still don't want to do. And like they also work, right? So they make you find the information you're looking for much quicker, but they don't carry an evaluative judgment, right? They don't actually like help you making like actually estimating the costs of your decision. And then there's this privacy rating, which is like a nutritional label, right? But still, like this is a really abstract kind of rating, right? So it doesn't give you also an indication what is a C? Why is a C better than a D? Why would I even care? Like I get this kind of abstract information, but I don't really know what to do with it. So the question is, like, obviously we need to do better than this, and how could we do that? Well, what I did, I looked at warning literature, because again, like we need to provide people with also the like mental models so they can actually integrate this information. So we need to kind of give them information about what actually awaits them. If you want to actually estimate costs, you need to know like what could the potential like consequences be, right? So good warning messages actually include information about the potential consequences, right? They also include information about the hazard. A hazard is like the specific circumstances that lead to like your potential consequences. And obviously like a good warning also tells you what to do to like not have these potential consequences happen to you. And to kind of find answers to all these three aspects, we kind of need to figure out how do these negative consequences manifest in the first place. And for this, we came up with the contextual model of perceived privacy. When I say we came up, it's probably a bit of an overstatement, because actually what we did, we combined like two models, like the model of perceived risk, which kind of you can see, or which kind of posits that like consequences follow from events. So basically, a negative consequence is the result of like multiple events kind of happening. And then we kind of borrowed from Weizenbaum's contextual integrity framework to kind of nest these context event consequence chains within contexts, right? And a context, according to Weizenbaum, is defined by actors. It's like who's sharing data, about whom is the data data types, and the purposes. So this is kind of the abstract thing, and then kind of we needed to fill this kind of model with like precise, concrete information. And what we did to that extent was we kind of did an analysis of the GDPR to kind of find out, okay, what were important categories for risk. And then we did like 32 expert interviews to kind of find like specific, like in the end, event consequence chains. So this is the result. It's a bit overwhelming. So I'm gonna like show you a specific example so that you can kind of understand what we like meant by this. So there's the case of Robert Julian Brock Williams, right? He was detained for 30 hours after a facial recognition system had wrongfully identified him as a criminal. And kind of in our framework, what would happen first? You would have data collection and storage, and in the like left corner, basically. So basically, first of all, you need to collect both the facial recognition data and the driver's license data that the kind of match was based on. Then we have inference, right? So the match is kind of generated. New data about the so-called suspect is generated, right? It's used to identify the individual. It leads to the emergence of new data, which is like where the circles go into like the first rectangle, which is kind of the first consequence emergence of information. And then from this, like the individual is singled out, right, which we describe as discrimination, and on top of it, the information is false, right? So we have defective data as another kind of follow-up consequence. And this kind of then results in the detaining of the person, which is stigmatization, right? Because the person cannot like partake in society anymore, and obviously like physical and social harm just by through detention. And I guess like he wasn't detained like in a way that like spared him physically. So let's take a closer look at like what this actually means for our model. The things that people feel are tangible consequences, right? What I just said, like physical harm, psychological harm, stigmatization, but obviously also like publicity damages or like financial losses. So these are things that people can relate to. The issue is that these are mediated by another set of consequences, which we call latent consequences, right? So these are things that happen not necessarily with the knowledge of the data subject affected. So in our example, before the person was detained, information had first emerged, right? And like so there was new information about the data subject, and it was wrong. So like these are things that the people don't necessarily kind of realize, right? The same goes for identity theft. If your identity is stolen, when do you know? You know when kind of the consequence manifests is something that you can feel. But until then, you don't really know. I mean, you might get an email, but this is not something that you like that comes back to haunt you. So, and the same is with decontextualization, right? Your data is shared. When do you know? You don't. So we have like this problem here that the consequences that people actually feel are mediated by these consequences that people don't feel. And we need to kind of find a way to communicate this. But the good thing is that we know what creates these consequences, right? And this is like, at least according to our results, processing operations. So storage of data, inference, right, in our case. So how can we now kind of use this as a guiding principle for communication? And again, don't be overwhelmed. These are like the risk categories that we kind of come up with. So let's remember what makes a good warning, right? We need information about the hazard, like what are the specific circumstances that might lead to negative consequences, right? And this is kind of where we inform the users about like potential causes for like negative consequences. So I've already talked about like processing operations, right? The GDPR, the regulation, kind of also like mandates that we talk about data types, right? And there are data types, especially in the health domain or in the financial domain, which should be like pointed out. And it's obviously also important to talk about purposes, right? I've listed data sale, right? Because again, it's basically equivalent to the like transmission of data, and also like increases the likelihood, right? Because if you can make money off it, why not? And so these are kind of the hazards. Another thing would be like instructions to kind of how to avoid this, right? And obviously, like a lot of the talks, like in the last 2 days, have been about like how can this be avoided on the controller side. But also, obviously, the data subject has also options, right? So at least according to GDPR, they have rights. They can have the data deleted, rectified, can object to processing, right? And then Laurie Craner has done some amazing work on like the choices that, like how to indicate like choices of data subjects. So we should also communicate this. And then obviously, like I've talked at length about the like potential consequences. So what is this good for? Well, first of all, obviously, it's about communication. And so, like, probably like the first question I'm going to get is like, aren't you scaring people again? And I would say, well, isn't this conference called like Privacy Engineering Practice and Respect? Like, aren't we respecting our data subjects, so like the people who use it? Shouldn't we like kind of not obfuscate what could happen, but actually be honest with them? So kind of, and actually enable them to make like a good decision that kind of incorporates both risks and benefits. So this would be kind of my answer to this. And like, I mean, if you need like another kind of argument, I would say it also kind of helps you identify where kind of risks for data subjects could arise, and kind of like it lets your users know that you care like about them, right? That you kind of respect them enough that you kind of even present them with information about potential negative consequences, and potentially even provide like information about that, how you go about kind of mitigating them. So then obviously, like generally the model can be used to like foster knowledge about risk generally, right? I was talking about like we lack risk literacy. And obviously research could hopefully expand and apply the model because obviously like there's no individual aspects in here, right? It's rather general. And I'm like, right now I'm working to like detect these categories through like large language models within the privacy policy, so that I can like automate this process, because if we're honest, people probably won't apply it themselves. So yeah, and obviously like just having this list is a good kind of basis for like design, right? So like how can we like if we have this list, we can kind of talk about how to visualize it, because this is like another beast in its own. So what did I try to get across? First, risk communication can actually improve privacy notices by providing evaluations and justifications for them. And the justification part is really important. Then what are the key causes for risk? It's processing operations. It's not data. It's what you do with the data, what matters. And I think very importantly also, before tangible consequences can be felt, like latent consequences have already occurred. Thank you.